All right, everyone, settle in for this one. Tonight, we're going to peel back the romance and the legend from one of history's most iconic figures, the 17th century pirate. Forget the swashbuckling adventures, the witty captains, and the chests overflowing with gold. We're diving into the real world, a world of weevils in your bread, scurvy in your gums, and the constant gnawing fear of the cat-o'-nine-tails. This is a story about why a man would choose a short, violent life under the black flag over a long, miserable one under the king's colors. It's a tale of tyranny, rebellion, and a brutal, fleeting kind of freedom that was often more dangerous than the slavery it replaced. As always, if you're enjoying these journeys into the past, I'd be so grateful for a like or a subscribe. It truly helps the channel grow. And I'm always fascinated to see where these stories are reaching. So drop a comment and let me know where in the world you're tuning in from and what time it is there. Okay, now find that perfect spot. Let the weight of the day just melt away and allow your body to sink deep into your mattress. We're leaving the modern world behind and heading back to the grimy, desperate docks of Bristol in 1695. You are not a hero, nor a villain, nor a character in a grand story. You are just Thomas, a lad of 17, and your world smells of fish, salt, and the damp, cloying mud of the Bristol docks. Your life is a map of hunger, defined by the gnawing emptiness in your belly and the biting cold that seeps through the threadbare wool of your coat. You were born in this world of grit and poverty, and you have no reason to believe you will ever leave it. Every day is the same. You wake before dawn in a cramped room you share with two other families, the air thick with the breath of a dozen sleeping souls. You work on the docks, hauling crates and mending nets for a pittance, your hands raw and bleeding from the coarse rope and splintered wood. Your dream is not of gold or glory, but of a full meal, of a single night where you go to sleep warm and wake up without the familiar ache of starvation. One evening, a man with a jovial face and a glint in his eye finds you nursing a cheap ale in a dockside tavern. He speaks of opportunity, of a voyage to the Caribbean on a merchant vessel, the Good Intent. He speaks of good pay, regular food, and the warm sun of the New World. It sounds like a prayer answered, a golden ticket out of the gray misery of your life. You sign the ship's articles with a hand that can barely write your own name, your heart pounding with a hope so fierce it feels like a physical pain. The next morning, as the shores of England recede into a cold, indifferent mist, you feel a sense of triumph. You have escaped. You are on your way to a new life. You have no way of knowing that you have just traded one kind of prison for another, and that your only true escape will come under the shadow of a black flag, a flag that promises not a new life, but a short and violent one, lived in a fleeting, brutal kind of freedom that was often more dangerous than the slavery it replaced.
As always, if you're enjoying these journeys into the past, I'd be so grateful for a like or a subscribe. It truly helps the channel grow. And I'm always fascinated to see where these stories are reaching. So drop a comment and let me know where in the world you're tuning in from and what time it is there. Okay, now find that perfect spot. Let the weight of the day just melt away and allow your body to sink deep into your mattress. We're leaving the modern world behind and heading back to the grimy, desperate docks of Bristol in 1695. You are not a hero, nor a villain, nor a character in a grand story. You are just Thomas, a lad of 17, and your world smells of fish, salt, and the damp, cloying mud of the Bristol docks. Your life is a map of hunger, defined by the gnawing emptiness in your belly and the biting cold that seeps through the threadbare wool of your coat. You were born in this world of grit and poverty, and you have no reason to believe you will ever leave it. Every day is the same. You wake before dawn in a cramped room you share with 2 other families, the air thick with the breath of a dozen sleeping souls. You work on the docks, hauling crates and mending nets for a pittance, your hands raw and bleeding from the coarse rope and splintered wood. Your dream is not of gold or glory, but of a full meal, of a single night where you go to sleep warm and wake up without the familiar ache of starvation. One evening, a man with a jovial face and a glint in his eye finds you nursing a cheap ale in a dockside tavern. He speaks of opportunity, of a voyage to the Caribbean on a merchant vessel, the Good Intent. He speaks of good pay, regular food, and the warm sun of the new world. It sounds like a prayer answered, a golden ticket out of the gray misery of your life. You sign the ship's articles with a hand that can barely write your own name, your heart pounding with a hope so fierce it feels like a physical pain. The next morning, as the shores of England recede into a cold, indifferent mist, you feel a sense of triumph. You have escaped. You are on your way to a new life. You have no way of knowing that you have just traded one kind of prison for another, and that your only true escape will come under the shadow of a black flag, a flag that promises not a new life, but a short and violent one, lived in a fleeting, brutal kind of freedom. Life aboard the Good Intent is not the grand adventure you were promised. It is a floating hell, governed by the whims of a captain whose cruelty is as vast and as unpredictable as the sea itself. Captain Davies is a man whose small authority has curdled his soul. He rules his ship not with respect, but with fear, and his primary instrument of control is the cat of nine tails, a whip whose knotted cords can strip the flesh from a man's back with a few casual strokes. You see it used within your first week for an infraction as minor as a dropped rope. The man's screams are a lesson that you and the rest of the crew learn well. On this ship, you are not a person. You are property, less valuable than the barrels of salted beef in the hold.
The food is a nightmare. The regular meals you were promised consist of hardtack, a biscuit so dense and so old that it has to be broken with a mallet. It is infested with weevils, small black insects that burrow through the bread. The older sailors teach you the trick. You tap the biscuit on the table in the dark, and the weevils, thinking it is night, crawl out. In the dim light of the mess, you can't see them, and you learn to eat quickly, telling yourself the extra crunch is just part of the texture. The meat is salted beef, stored for months, sometimes years. It has a slab of gray, leathery flesh that has to be soaked for hours to be even remotely chewable, and it tastes of nothing but salt and decay. The water is stored in wooden casks, and by the second month at sea, it has turned green and slimy with algae, tasting foul and leaving a slick film in your mouth. You drink it anyway, because the alternative is to die of thirst. The work is relentless, a cycle of backbreaking labor that never ends. You are woken before dawn to swab the decks, a pointless task as the salt spray covers them again within minutes. You climb the rigging in all weather, your bare feet and hands gripping the tarred ropes as the ship pitches and rolls beneath you. In a storm, it is a terrifying dance with death. You are 100 feet above the deck, the wind trying to tear you from your perch, the icy rain blinding you as you wrestle with the frozen canvas sails. One slip, one moment of lost concentration, and you are a dead man. Your fall a brief, unnoticed event in the chaos of the storm. Below decks, the conditions are even worse. The crew's quarters are a cramped, dark space where 60 men sleep in hammocks, strung so close together that you are constantly breathing in your neighbor's air. The space is never dry, the air thick with the stench of unwashed bodies, bilge water, and the ever-present smell of rot. Rats, bold and fat, scurry in the darkness, and the ship is alive with lice and fleas. This is your life now, a monotonous cycle of work, hunger, and fear, punctuated by the captain's random acts of brutality. The dream of the Caribbean has faded, replaced by the simple, desperate hope of surviving until the next sunrise. 3 months into the voyage, somewhere in the vast, empty expanse of the Atlantic, your miserable routine is shattered by a lookout's cry. "Sail off the port bow!" The captain and his officers rush to the rail, telescopes raised. You and the rest of the crew watch, a knot of dread tightening in your gut. The other ship is fast, a sleek, dark-hulled brigantine that cuts through the water with an unnerving grace. It closes the distance with an unnerving speed, and then you see it, a flag climbing the mast. It is not the flag of any nation you recognize. It is a simple, stark black, with a skull and crossbones in its center, the Jolly Roger. Panic erupts on the deck of the Good Intent. Captain Davies, his face pale with a fear that negates all his blustering authority, begins to shout contradictory orders. The crew, who have no loyalty to a man who has only ever shown them cruelty, move with a sullen, deliberate slowness. There is no will to fight here, no desire to die for this ship or this captain. The pirate vessel is now alongside you, and the air is filled with the terrifying sound of their battle cries, a wild, inhuman roar. A volley of cannon fire rips across your deck, not aimed to sink, but to intimidate. The sound is deafening, a physical blow that makes your teeth rattle. The air fills with the acrid smell of gunpowder and the sharp, terrifying hiss of splinters. A man next to you screams, clutching his face, a great shard of wood from the ship's own rail embedded in his eye. Then they are upon you. Grappling hooks fly across the gap, and the pirates swarm over the rails. They are not the romantic figures of later stories. They are a terrifying, multicultural horde of desperate men. Sun-blackened Englishmen, freed African slaves, Spanish renegades. They are armed with cutlasses, pistols, and boarding axes, and they move with a practiced, brutal efficiency. The fight, if it can be called that, is short and one-sided. Captain Davies and his officers try to mount a defense, but they are quickly cut down. You see the captain fall, his sword clattering on the deck, a look of shocked disbelief on his face as a pirate's cutlass opens his belly. The rest of the crew, including you, throws down their weapons and surrenders. You and the other surviving sailors are herded onto the main deck, forced to your knees as the pirates secure the ship. You expect to be killed, or at the very least, tortured for information. But what happens next is something you could never have predicted. The pirate captain, a tall man with a wild black beard and eyes that hold a surprising intelligence, steps forward. He is not the snarling beast you expected. He introduces himself as Captain Bellamy. He looks over the cowering crew of the Good Intent, and then he speaks, his voice calm and reasonable. "We have no quarrel with you men. Our quarrel is with the masters who abuse you, who pay you a pittance and feed you poison. We offer you a choice." He points to his own ship, the Sea Serpent, now tethered alongside. "You can join us, live as free men. Every man has a vote in our affairs. Every man gets an equal share of what we take. Or," he gestures to the longboat of the Good Intent, "you can take this boat with enough provisions to reach the nearest port and continue your lives as wage slaves. The choice is yours."
It is a moment of pure, disorienting shock. You look at the faces of your crewmates. You see the fear, the confusion, but also a dawning glimmer of hope. Here, on the bloody deck of a captured ship, you are being offered something you have never had in your entire life: a choice, a vote, a share, a chance at freedom. It is a dangerous freedom, to be sure, but it is freedom nonetheless. You look at the longboat, and you think of the life that awaits you if you take it: a return to the docks of Bristol, to the hunger and the cold. Then you look at the black flag, and for the first time you see not just a symbol of death, but a symbol of a strange, terrifying, and exhilarating new beginning. You and about half of the crew from the Good Intent make your choice. You choose the black flag. The first act of your new life is to participate in the pirate's own form of justice. Captain Bellamy turns to the captured officers of the Good Intent, the first mate and the boatswain, men who had been Captain Davy's willing enforcers. "And what of these two?" Bellamy asks the assembled crew, both his own men and the new recruits. "What is their fate?" A pirate council is held right there on the deck. It is a raw, immediate form of democracy. Any man who has a grievance is allowed to speak. One by one, your former crewmates step forward and testify to the beatings, the withheld rations, the senseless cruelties they suffered at the hands of these two men. The verdict is swift and unanimous. The two officers are to be marooned. They are put in the longboat, given a single cask of water and a few biscuits, and set adrift, their chances of survival in the open ocean slim to none. Then comes the most important ritual of your new life. You are presented with the ship's articles, the Pirate Code. It is a long document, written in a clear hand, and the quartermaster, a one-eyed man named Israel, reads it aloud, so that all, literate or not, can understand its terms. The articles are the constitution of this floating criminal republic, and they are unlike any law you have ever known. The first article is stunning in its simplicity. Every man shall have an equal vote in the affairs of the moment. The captain is elected, and he can be deposed by a majority vote. His authority is absolute only in the heat of battle. At all other times, he is just another man. The code lays out the rules of life on the ship. No fighting amongst the crew on board. All disputes are to be settled on shore with sword and pistol. No bringing women onto the ship. No gambling with cards or dice. These rules are not about morality. They are about maintaining order and discipline on a vessel crewed by violent, heavily armed men. The articles then detailed the share system. Every man gets one share of the plunder.
The captain and the quartermaster get a share and a half. The skilled positions, like the ship's carpenter and surgeon, get a share and a quarter. It is the fairest system of compensation you have ever encountered. And then there is the most remarkable provision of all, a system of insurance, a form of workman's compensation for a dangerous profession. The code specifies payments for injuries sustained in battle. The loss of a right arm is worth 600 pieces of 8, a left arm, 500, a right leg, 500, a left leg, 400, an eye, 100. You who have seen men on the docks left to beg after a simple workplace accident are astounded. These men, these outlaws, have created a society that is, in some ways, more just and more equitable than the one you left behind. You sign the articles, making your mark alongside the signatures and scrawls of the other men. You are now a pirate, a brother of the coast, a man living on account. Your old life is over. Life aboard the Sea Serpent is a study in contradictions. It is, in many ways, as hard as life on the merchant ship. The work is still relentless, the living quarters are still cramped, but the atmosphere is entirely different. The fear is gone. You are no longer ruled by the arbitrary whims of a tyrant. You are a member of a company, a shareholder in a dangerous enterprise. You have a voice. Your opinion at the regular crew councils is worth as much as any other man's. This sense of ownership, of agency, changes everything. The food is still simple, but it is plentiful. After looting the good intent, the larder is full. You eat your fill of the same salted beef and hardtack, but now it tastes not of deprivation, but of victory. And there is rum. Great quantities of rum, which is treated as a fundamental right. It is rationed out daily, a welcome warmth in the belly, and the dulling agent for the boredom and the ever-present risk of your new life. Sickness is still a constant threat. Scurvy, born of the lack of fresh fruit and vegetables, is the great enemy. You see its effects on the older sailors, the bleeding gums, the lethargy, the old wounds that mysteriously reopen. The ship surgeon is the carpenter, a man whose medical knowledge is limited to what he has learned through brutal trial and error. His primary tools are a saw, a bottle of rum for anesthetic, and a pot of hot tar to cauterize the wounds. An injury that would be minor on land can be a death sentence at sea, where infection is almost inevitable. But there is a camaraderie here that you have never known. The crew is a true melting pot. You share a hammock with a man who was once a slave on a sugar plantation in Barbados. You learn to play cards with a Frenchman who can barely speak English but is a master of the game. You work alongside men from Ireland, from Holland, from the American colonies. Their past do not matter here. A man is judged not by his birth or his nation, but by his courage, his skill, and his loyalty to the crew. You learn the pirate's trade. You learn how to use a cutlass, not with the finesse of a duelist, but with the brutal efficiency of a close-quarters fighter. You learn to load and fire a flintlock pistol, a clumsy and inaccurate weapon that is devastating at short range. You learn the grim mathematics of cannon fire, how to gauge distance, how to load the great guns with powder and shot, how to handle the massive recoil that can shatter a man's leg if he stands in the wrong place.
And you learn the art of the chase. You spend long, boring weeks at sea, scanning the horizon for the telltale sign of a sail. The boredom is a challenge in itself, a great, empty expanse of time that is filled with drinking, gambling, and the telling of tall tales. But then, when a prize is spotted, the ship explodes into a frenzy of purposeful activity. Sails are trimmed, the decks are cleared for action, and the slow, lazy rhythm of daily life is replaced by the thrilling, focused tension of the hunt. This is what you live for now, these moments of adrenaline and possibility, the wild gamble that is the pirate's life. Your first real battle is against a Spanish galleon, a ship much larger and heavily armed than the Sea Serpent. Captain Bellamy calls a council. "She's a fat prize, men," he says, his eyes gleaming, "likely full of silver from the New World, but she'll not be taken easily. She carries 20 guns to our 12. The choice is yours. Do we fight or do we let her pass?" The debate is fierce. Some argue that the risk is too great, that they should wait for an easier target. Others, their greed outweighing their caution, argue for an immediate attack. In the end, the vote is for battle. The democracy of thieves has chosen a path of high risk and high reward. The approach is a masterful display of seamanship. The Sea Serpent is smaller and faster, and your helmsman uses this advantage, staying in the galleon's blind spot, avoiding its heavy broadsides while peppering its decks with your own smaller cannons. The noise of the battle is a physical thing, a deafening roar that shakes the very air. The ship is filled with the thick, acrid smoke of gunpowder, which burns your eyes and throat. The command to board comes, and you are part of the first wave, swarming over the galleon's rail. The deck is a scene from a butcher's shop. The Spanish have suffered terribly from your cannon fire. The air is filled with the screams of the wounded and the clash of steel. Your own part in the fight is a confused, terrifying blur. You are no longer Thomas, the boy from Bristol. You are a cornered animal fighting for your life. You parry a clumsy sword thrust from a Spanish sailor and run him through, the feeling of the blade sinking into flesh a sickening, unforgettable sensation. You see a friend cut down, and you step over his body without a second thought, your only focus on the next threat, the next swing of a cutlass. The battle is won. The galleon is taken. The prize is even richer than Bellamy had hoped. The hold is full of silver bars, chests of coins, and valuable silks. But the victory has come at a cost. 7 of your crew are dead. A dozen more are wounded, some gravely. You help the carpenter-surgeon with the grim work of tending to the injured. You hold a man down as the surgeon saws off his shattered leg. The man screams muffled by the leather strap he bites down on. You watch as the stump is plunged into a bucket of boiling tar, the smell of burning flesh a sickening addition to the stench of the bloody deck. The man faints from the pain, which is the only mercy he will receive. He will likely die of infection within a week, but for now he is alive. The division of the plunder is a solemn, formal affair. It is done on the main deck in full view of the entire crew. The quartermaster presides, ensuring that every man receives his proper share according to the articles. The shares of the dead men are set aside, to be sent to their families if they had named any, or to be added to the common fund. Your own share, a single share, is a fortune beyond your wildest dreams. You hold the heavy silver coins in your hands, more money than your father made in 10 years of hard labor. You are rich, but as you look at the faces of the wounded and think of the dead, you wonder if any amount of silver is worth the price. The next stop is a pirate haven. A place like Nassau or Port Royal, where the rule of law is a distant rumor and a man's worth is measured in the weight of the silver in his pockets. These ports are a necessary part of the pirate ecosystem, places to sell their stolen goods, repair their ships, and spend their plunder in a blaze of glorious, self-destructive excess. Your arrival in Nassau is a chaotic, joyous affair. The ship is greeted by a cacophony of cannon salutes and drunken cheers from the other pirate crews in the harbor. The town itself is a ramshackle collection of taverns, brothels, and warehouses, a temporary city built on a foundation of stolen wealth and cheap rum.
For the next few weeks, you live in a blur of indulgence. The silver that seemed like a fortune on the ship now feels like a finite resource to be spent as quickly as possible. You drink rum until you can no longer stand. You feast on fresh pork and tropical fruits, a welcome and life-saving relief after the diet of the sea. You gamble away a significant portion of your share in a single night of cards, the thrill of the risk almost as intoxicating as the rum. You find companionship in the arms of the women who work the taverns and brothels, women whose lives are as hard and as precarious as your own, and you share with them moments of fleeting, purchased tenderness. This is the pirate's shore leave. A frantic, desperate attempt to feel alive, to burn away the memories of the violence and the fear. But it is a hollow, transient pleasure. The money disappears with shocking speed. Fights break out over women, over cards, over imagined insults. Men are stabbed in drunken brawls, and their bodies are unceremoniously dumped in the harbor. You wake up many mornings with a pounding headache, your pockets empty, and a vague sense of shame that is quickly washed away by the first drink of the day. You see Captain Bellamy in one of the taverns, not drinking, but negotiating with a merchant who specializes in black market goods. He is trading silver for cannonballs, for barrels of gunpowder, for rolls of sailcloth, for casks of salted beef. The captain, even on shore, is always thinking of the next voyage, of keeping the ship, the engine of their enterprise, in working order. The end of your shore leave is inevitable. One day the call goes out. The sea serpent is ready to sail. The crew is rounded up from the taverns and brothels, some willingly, some dragged back by their more sober crewmates. You find yourself back on the familiar decks of the ship, your head aching, your share of the silver almost entirely gone. You have nothing to show for your great fortune but a few new scars and a blurry collection of memories. And as the ship sails out of the harbor, back into the vast, empty loneliness of the sea, you realize the truth of the pirate's life. You are only free for as long as the money lasts. The rest of the time, you are a slave to the ship, to the hunt, to the endless cycle of violence and plunder. The black flag that had seemed like a symbol of freedom now feels like the mark of a different kind of bondage. The next voyage is different. The easy hunting grounds of the Caribbean are becoming more crowded and more dangerous. The navies of England and Spain are increasing their patrols, and the governors of the island ports are becoming less willing to turn a blind eye to the pirates' activities. The golden age of piracy is beginning to tarnish. Captain Bellamy decides on a more audacious plan. They will sail to the coast of Africa to hunt the rich slave ships and the East Indiamen laden with the treasures of the Orient. The journey across the Atlantic is long and arduous. The weeks of boredom at sea are a greater test of discipline than any battle. The crew, their shore leave indulgences a distant memory, grow restless and irritable. The food supplies dwindle, and the familiar, hated diet of hardtack and salted meat returns, and with it the first signs of scurvy. Your own gums begin to feel soft and tender, and they bleed when you chew the hard biscuits.
A profound, bone-deep weariness settles over you, a lethargy that has nothing to do with a lack of sleep. It is during this long, empty voyage that you witness a darker side of the pirate democracy. A man is accused of stealing from another crewmate's sea chest. The crime is a serious one, a violation of the trust that holds their fragile society together. A council is held. The accused man protests his innocence, but the evidence against him is strong. The verdict, decided by a vote of the entire crew, is guilty. The punishment is prescribed in the articles, marooning. The ship sails to a small, uninhabited island, a tiny speck of sand and rock in the middle of the ocean. The guilty man is put ashore with a single pistol, a small amount of gunpowder and shot, and a cask of water. As the sea serpent sails away, you watch him standing on the beach, a solitary figure shrinking in the distance. His fate is to die of thirst, of starvation, or by his own hand. The justice of the pirates is swift, democratic, and utterly merciless. The hunting off the African coast is good, but the prey is more dangerous. You take a slave ship after a brutal, bloody fight. The prize is not in gold, but in human lives. The hold of the captured ship is a vision of hell. Hundreds of African men, women, and children are packed into a space so small they cannot stand, chained together in the filth and darkness. The smell is a physical blow, a stench of death, disease, and despair so powerful it makes you gag. Captain Bellamy, in a surprising act of conscience, orders the slaves to be freed. He has the chains struck off and lands them on a remote but habitable part of the coast with provisions from the captured ship. He says to the crew, "We are thieves, not butchers of men." But some of the crew grumble. The slaves were a valuable cargo. They could have been sold. The democratic ideals of the pirates, it seems, have their limits. Your career as a pirate lasts for 3 years. It is a lifetime in that profession. You see men die in battle, from disease, in drunken brawls. You see fortunes won and squandered. You see the brief, intoxicating illusion of freedom and the long, grinding reality of a life lived on the edge of a knife. Your own end comes not with a bang, but with a whimper. The sea serpent, heavily laden with plunder from a captured merchantman, is caught in a hurricane off the coast of the Carolinas. The storm is a monster, a force of nature that makes the battles of men seem like children's games. The sky turns a sickly green, and the sea rises in mountainous waves that threaten to swallow the ship whole. The sails are torn to ribbons, the mainmast cracks and falls with a sound like the breaking of the world's spine. You and the rest of the crew work with a desperate, hopeless courage, cutting away the wreckage, manning the pumps as the sea pours in through the strained timbers. But it is no use. The ship is dying. The order is given to abandon ship. In the chaos of the storm, you manage to cling to a piece of floating wreckage. You watch as the sea serpent, your home, your prison, your entire world for 3 years is consumed by the waves. You are adrift for 2 days, clinging to life, your body battered, your throat raw for thirst. On the 3rd day, you are picked up by a passing ship. It is a vessel of the Royal Navy. Your trial in Charleston is a brief, formal affair. You are a pirate, caught in the act. There is no defense. The judge, a man in a powdered wig who looks at you with a wearied disgust, sentences you to hang. As you stand on the gallows, a rope around your neck, you look out at the crowd that has gathered to watch you die. You see the faces of respectable folk, men and women who have lived their lives within the law, who have never known the hunger that drove you to sea or the tyranny that drove you to the black flag. You think of your short, violent life.
You have been a wage slave and a free man. You have been a pauper and a prince. You have seen more of the world than you ever dreamed of, and you have committed acts that will haunt you in whatever afterlife there may be. Was it worth it? The freedom, the brotherhood, the fleeting moments of glory. As the hangman pulls the lever and the platform drops away beneath you, you find that you still don't have an answer. Your world goes black, and the story of Thomas, the boy from Bristol who became a pirate, is over.